Masechta Zevachim, Mem Tes Amud Aleph. We're starting from Mem Ches Amud Aleph, Amud Beis, Mem Ches Amud Beis, 6 lines from the bottom. From the word Ashkechan. Okay. Yeah. So the Gemara says Ashkechan l'shchita be'oila l'mitzvah, Kabbalah nami l'mitzvah, Ashkechan shchita v'Kabbalah la'akim b'noam. The main thing is the last words. Where do we find? Because the other words we said already yesterday, but where do we find that shchita and Kabbalah has to be mitzvah? And not only that it's a mitzvah, but as a mitzvah, we already brought psukim before, where we know it's a mitzvah. But either from the Bava HaMeisiv, and the Kabbalah we learned out, also a different marker, like we said before. But where do we see that the Shechita Kabbalah bitzafin, that the evidence, if it wasn't done bitzafin, it's going to be ma'akiv, it's going to possibly carbon? No, from where do we know that? Zag the Gemara.
But we're supposed to be shechted. Which way?
It has to be shechted by tzafin. Yes, so that's we want to know, where do we learn out that it's ma'akiv? You remember that the Mizbeach was on the Dorim, and the end of the Mizbeach, that line, from that line and on, that's where the Shechita took place, and that's the tzafin. Okay, but that's mamish facing the Mizbeach. There was a machlekes, others said, even in the area before the place where it faced the Mizbeach is also considered tzafin. Yeah, we had it. There's a three-way machlekes, but the tzafin was on the back of the Mizbeach till the end of the wall. That's where they did the Shechita. How do we know if the Shechita wasn't done b'tzafin, or the Kabbalas Adam was not b'tzafin, that it's going to be la'akiv, that it's going to possibly come? Abba had said, he came Rabbi Bar Shilai. How do we know that by a korban chatas that it has to be b'tzafin? It doesn't say by chatas it has to be b'tzafin. We learn it out from Ma'ilaf, because it says b'makim Ma'ilaf. The shechita of the chatas should be b'makim Ma'ilaf. But by chatas itself doesn't say it has to be b'tzafin. So, and we say the chatas is ma'akeves, the chatas which we learn out from Ma'ilaf, we say is ma'akiv. Oila, which is the source of where it says b'feidish that the shechita has to be b'tzafin. Shabbat chatas mekeicha, where chatas is learned out from Ma'ilaf. So the oila shouldn't have been for oila that it's me'akiv. So what are you talking about? I can slug it up. Malachatos shekin chaperes achayav krisis. Chatos is mechaper on those that are chayav krisis. By oila, it's only mechaper on a mitzvah say. So oila is more lenient than chatos. I would say dafka chatos is mitzvah and on this oila. Ravina al kash leili avada. You're learning from the Oila that Shechita is a mitzvah, maybe. Mitzvah, that it's la'akiv. You want to learn out from Chatas, it should be ma'akiv, not Kavach Chema, because the mitzvah of Shechita mitzvah, you learn from Oila. But Chatas, you learn from Oila. Now, Chatas, you want to say, is from Chatas, you want to learn out that just like by Chatas, it's going to be ma'akiv for sure by Oila, because Chatas, you learn out that it's a mitzvah from Oila. Says the Gemara, this kasha was a kasha taka avada, but he says it doesn't make sense. I think like Abi attempted to say, he didn't fully say it. Klum matzinu tafel cham minaika. How could you have the tafel, the one that you're learning out? I saw that. The lamed came daya lamed. I didn't leave it. Okay, so he's saying over here that tafel cannot be cham minaika. How could you have something that's a tafel? Chatas, you're learning out, it's bechal, the whole mucker of shechita, you're learning out from Oila. Chatas is ma'akeves, so you can say, Oila is not ma'akeves. How could a tafel be more chamad adika? Says Amalei Mazut, when they have money, you can't have that the chatas should be more chamad than the tafel should be more chamad than the hika. We have a story with Maisa Sheni, the Univda. You take Maisa Sheni, you have too many payers. You can't schlep it up to Yerushalayim. What do? You redeem it with money, and then you go up to Yerushalayim, and with that money you buy the Maisa Sheni. But if you bought now in Yerushalayim Maisa Sheni, and it became Tameh, and you want to now redeem it, could you redeem it? No. So which one is more chamor? The tafel, the money that you redeem the Maisa Sheni, which is like secondary to that.
Why can't you redeem it?
That's the halacha. Ain't nivda.
How do you learn that
That's halacha. It's not. It's a mishnah. I'm going to say it now in Tzav. Harai Maisa, the Hunita. The Maisa Sheni, the original Maisa Sheni, could be redeemed. If, let's say, it was even Tameh, you can redeem it. Now, if you took that money and bought Maisa Sheni, let's say, in Yerushalayim, and it became Tameh, and if it doesn't become redeemed, it's not like we learned in the Mishnah. Halakuach. No, you have to. He has to be covered. I think he has to bury it. Has a kedusha. No. Halakuch because Ma'aser Sheni shenitma. You put the money that the Kes Ma'aser bought. This is only Rabbi Yehuda. But Rabbi Yehuda only you covered. Rabbi Yehuda says you bury it. Tanakama says you can redeem even the second Ma'aser Sheni if it became Tameh. But Rabbi Yehuda says, what do you do with it? You bury it. So you can't. There's no pigeon. You can't redeem it. You can't have a. You can't do nothing. So you see, the Tafel is more common than the Iker, because the first one, the Iker Ma'aser Sheni, you were able to redeem it, and when it comes to the Tafel, you can't.
Maybe it's not in that it's chomer. Maybe just because you can't do it because it doesn't have the koyach to be redeemed.
We have to. It's almost like that. Yes. The Ma'aser Sheni that you bought with the kesef is not. It doesn't have the right. It's not enough. It's not so strong enough to let it be redeemed, to transfer the kedusha to something else. Like you take a person you want to clone him. You could clone A to B, but B you can't clone to C because B is shemfashvach. It's a clone from A. So the only way to make is the one that you were able to redeem was the first one, the original, because that you can clone. When you come to B, I don't know if it's a good muscle. Yeah, it's not bad, but from B to C you can't. So it's fashvach givan. That's why the kedusha cannot transfer. Zog Yimara Barei Tmura. Well, you have Tmura. Tmura that somebody says on Behemoth Kachim. He says, I want to get this feta behema. This is better for the carbon. So the ilu kachim leichayla abal mum kavua. Kachim is not chal on a behema that has a bal mum. You want to make now. This behema is a beautiful fat behema, but it has a mum. I want it to be a carbon. You can't. It's nish chal. Vilu I chayla. But what's if you redeemed it for another behema, that this one that had a mum, or it got a mum, and you redeemed it for another behema, and the other behema had a mum, the kedusha is chal. So why is it chal? Even though it has a mum, the second one, the first one is no good, or the first one was good, but you want to redeem the kedusha from the first one onto the second one. If the first one would have had a mum, you would never be able to start. The kedusha should be chal on the behema. But if, let's say, this first behema got a mum, and now you want to redeem it, and you redeem it on another behema that has a mum, the kedusha is chal on that behema also. It's also, they're both going to be kedusha, but the kedusha is chal on it. How's the kedusha chal on it? So you see, the tafel is now just as strong. It's stronger than the first one, because by the first one, if it had a mum, you would never be able to turn it into a carbon. Yeah, the kedusha is on the guf. Very simple. The first one, you're coming from chulin. There's no koyach of kedusha anywhere, and you want that the kedusha should be chal on something that kedusha cannot be chal. So you can, if you started from chulin, you can't make kedusha on a balmum. But once the kedusha was there, let's say a behema, it was a normal kedusha, and if you got a mum, and now you want to make a tmuna for another behema which has a balmum. So you're coming from kedusha. Kedusha is just transfer. It's not a problem. You're coming from chulin, you can, but for kedusha you could. So again, it's nishkanaya that the tafel's more chamed. It's a whole different reason. So we're back to square one. If the tafel is so not to square one, we want to bring out that's the reason that the chata, that the oila has to be bitzafre, because the tafel of chatos cannot be stronger than the oila, which is the ikar. And these two cases are not a raya that the tafel is chamor. One is because by Ma'aser Sheni it got weaker, and by Tmura there was no kedusha by the first animal, the first animal. Says Gemara, I'll ask him from Carbon Pesach. How do you Carbon Pesach? The way Netam Smichel Nesachnu Tnuvas Chassav Sheikh Lo Moisa Didei. Moisa, let me just tell you what Moisa is. Moisa is that, let's say, a person designated a Korban Pesach and he died. That's called Moisa. Another case of Moisa is you designated a behemoth for a Korban Pesach, and then the behemoth said, and then you took another animal. Then you got back the first animal. The first animal is called Moisa. So what's the halacha?
So you use both? You have to use both of them?
Oh, so he says the first one. Now what you did is a Korban Pesach. What you have the behemoth now, that's a Korban Pesach. A Pesach, what's the halacha by Pesach? It's very lenient. You don't have to do the smicha. The balabais doesn't have to lean their hands. You don't need the sachin. There's no vine was megis with the behemoth. And Tnuvas Chassav Sheikh, there's no waving of the thigh with the breast and the. You don't do it like a lulav. You don't do the shaking. But the first animal, when you get it, we treat it like a shlamim. You have to do smicha, chatnufa, chazal sheikh. It's much more chamor. Yeah, but divas zantlafen is like the tafel. The ikir Korban Pesach we will mark it. The tafel macht men shvere dinim. We make it has to have smicha like a shlamim. It's much more chamor. So you see, the tafel is more chamor. What are you talking about? Pesach b'shayim meisa shana. When you're talking about when you found the first one is already after you already marking the Korban Pesach. It's already the rest of the days of the year. It's not called Pesach anymore. It's called shlamim. So you can't, it's apples and oranges.
It loses its designation, though.
Huh? It loses its designation. Yeah. It's called shlamim. It lost its designation as a Pesach. It's not now a shlamim. It's a whole different ballgame. If you want, I can tell you a different answer. He says the reason why by chatos, I'll say that here I'll say Amakai by chatos. It says chatos b'mekayim, and we dashen b'mekayim tehei. The pasuk said it a second time that repeated that by oila you have to shacht it in the place. The chatas you have to shacht in the place of the oil, which is tzafin. So since you had two psukim telling you the same thing, since the pasuk, the shana shechaza hakas v'shana sadin, the pasuk said a second time the same din. So when it says a second time the same din, it's le'akiv. First time it told you the mitzvah. Yeah, the mitzvah is you have to do a bit tzafin. Then he repeats that you have to shacht sachatos b'mekayim ha'oila. It says it a second time, that's la'akiv. To tell you that if you don't do batzafin, then the Korban will be possible. That's why it's repeated. Okay. So you want to asham and the bite of batzafin. Now with new Korban. Till now we spoke about chatas and oila. Asham, how do we know it has to be batzafin? But the one of the chesiv, it says in the pasuk, b'mekayim asher yishchatas oila, yishchatas asham. In the same place where you shacht oila, and the oila says b'feidish in the pasuk that you should shacht the batzafin. That's where you should shech the ashram. So that's how you know the ashram is bit suffering. So the mother ashram, we find the shchita. We find takav shchita has to be bit suffering by ashram. But Kabbalah Menolan, how do we know the receiving of the blood that it has to be bit suffering? And the mother,
what else do you want it to be? I mean, you shech the behemoth and soften. So what are you going to bring the behemoth over here?
Yeah, you can move the behemoth around. Yeah,
with the blood leaking.
Yeah, you could be makabel dam elsewhere maybe. Says the Gemara.
But the meat is shechs already. The blood is here.
Yeah, so he might want to move the animal right away, move it to the side or a different direction. So how do you know it has to be received over there? It says v'azdama yisek at the pasuk. At the end of the pasuk, it says b'mekayim asher yishchatas ha'ila yishchatas ha'asham, and it says v'azdama. So v'azdama there is saying v'azdama yisek. It's talking about zikas adam, not kabbalas adam. But kibul damai nami b'tzafin. Since it says v'azdama, it could also be interpreted as Kabbalah's Damai. That's how he teaches over here. He says, don't say it only means Zika. Because it cannot be referring to, even though it says Damai, Yizoik, right? But the Zika is Nishbat, is Bechlal not Mitzafin. It's on the Mizbeach, the Zika. On the corners. So what is Vezdame we coming to tell you about Kabbalas Adam? That Kabbalas Adam has to be Mitzafin. So the mother How do we know the one who's receiving the blood, he has to be also unsoftened? You remember the guy who could go with a chalaf, a long chalaf, by shchita, he could stand on Dorim. By shchita, we had it before. And he could shecht on the soften. So maybe with that, he could take a stick and hold the kli and be makabel. He's standing elsewhere and being makabel in another place.
That's
So-
catching fish.
Catching fish, yeah. How do you know that he has to be in suffering? And the one it says damei, it says ve'es damei. Why the s is extra? So what is the extra word s coming to teach us? That he himself has to be mitzvah. So like when Ashkelon you find the mitzvah only for a mitzvah that you have to do be makabel adam mitzvah. But la'akim nolan, how do we know that it's me'akif? That if you don't, if he's not there, it's going to be possible. And the Gemara Krach, and he looks. There's another pasuk. What does it say? V'shachat es hakeves b'mekoim asher yishchat es hachatas v'sa'ila. In the same place where you shech the chatas and the oila. That's tzafin, and we know the oila is in tzafin. So it says the Gemara. So why we already learned the din shchitas b'safin from another pasuk. It says b'mekoim asher yishchat es ha'ila yishchat es ha'asham. So why are you saying again? But shachtas hakeves the second pasuk. Why are you saying it again? Obviously, to tell us that even with the Yabed, that it's going to be ma'akif. So are you saying that pasuk by Hasham Metzora that it says is coming to teach us that it's la'akiv, that if it's not mitzafin, the carbon is going to be possible? That's not what the pasuk is coming to teach us. We need it like we learned in the Braisa. Now he's going to explain what this means. Keitzad. It says in the pasuk, "V'shachat es hakeves b'mekoim asher yishchat es hachat zayla." Where should you shecht it? The asham, in the same place as the chatas noila. B'mekoim hakodesh, ki kachatas ha'asham hu. The chatas is and the asham are the same. She'ein tamid leim kachatas ha'asham. So let's start a second. Asham, here we're talking about asham etzera. Bechlal, all Hashamim should have the same din. It's like a binyanaf. All Hashamim should have the same din, that you have to be makriv, the matan daman, the blood with the imurim on the mizbeach. But here you have a problem. Hashem Etzera was singled out separately than all the Hashamim, because Hashem Etzera has so many different dinim, so it's unique. It's not a regular Hashem. We don't even consider it as a Hashem. Why? What's different by Hashem Etzera? What do they do with the blood? That the Metzora stands in the outside. He sticks his thumb. He puts his ear. They give him the ear inside the heichel, and they put the blood.
That's how
They
the
give
Rebbe
him
started to
the pazer. They give him a pazer to put in the blood. Then the toe he has to stick. And the toe also he has to stick. There's so many different dinim Hashem Etzera, so maybe it's different. So this is the lashon. What Davish Bechlal means a asham that was in the cloud, but v'yatza lidim medavachadash. She came out and it told you no dinim. Hashem Etzera has no dinim. Bayin yad, bayin ragloi, the yemanis as yemanis. So now it's not part of the cloud. So you can't put it back together with all the other Hashamim. Till the Torah gives you a ribui to tell you, no, this Hashem is like all the other Hashamim. But Kolzman, the pasuk doesn't come back and tell you that. It's not going to be like the other Hashamim.
It's not the same.
It's not the same. So he says, look, it says that you shech the keves in the same place as the Chatas Ha'ela, which is Kikachatas Hashem, which is in Tzafri. Same Talmud Leimer Kachatas Hashem. Says L'cheda Kachatas Ha'asham is extra. What does he come to tell you? Ma Talmud Leima Kachatas Ha'asham. So he explains like this. This Kachatas Ha'asham is the pasuk that's going to tell you that Hashem Etzera goes back into the cloud, and it's just like all other Hashamim. Okay, now he's going to explain in detail. Lefi Sheyotza Hashem Etzera. Since Hashem Etzera was singled out, was taken out from the cloud, leave the Medavar Chodesh to tell you new dinim. What are the new dinim? Bevayan Yod. that you have to put the blood on the thumb, uvayin regel on the toe, but it's not your manis, and on the right ear. So I would thought it's different than other Hashamim, where the other Hashamim they take the blood and the fats and they put it on the mizbeach. By Hashem it's shanish because it's different. Talmud Leima came the extra words kachatas ha'ashamhu. Why did he say these words to be makish Hashem etzeda to a chatas which is like a regular Hashem? Ma chatas to unamatan domim. Just like a chatas, it requires the blood should be put on the mizbeach and the fats on the mizbeach. So too, Hashem Etzera needs matan dam to put it back. Before I would have said it's not like a regular Hashem. This is what we say every morning. Now you understand what it says in the morning. Kol davar shahay b'chlal. Anything that wasn't the klal lechatchila, Hashem Etzera wasn't the klal. The yotza litim bedavar chadash, and it came out of the klal because it had new dinim that the other Hashemim don't have. So, all the Hashemim don't have it. You can't just push it back in it like all the other klalim. Only till the Torah says befedish it is, and that's what kachatas Hashem is coming to tell you. So since it's so I would have thought also tzafin. I wouldn't have known tzafin. So, but this kachatas Hashem has come to tell you that it's the din of tzafin. So here we're only learning the mitzvah. You can't tell me he's coming to tell you the akiv. The Gemara is asking. We needed the pasuk of a shachat es hakevs b'mkeim asher yishchat es hachatas v'sa'ila to tell you that Hashem Mitzvah b'chlal has a din like a regular Hashem, that the domim, the imudim, and the din of tzafin is a mitzvah also by Hashem Mitzvah. Not that it's la'akiv. In fact, the Gemara came. If so, if it's only come to teach la'akiv, nichta b'hai, nichta b'hai. If it's only come to teach it's a mitzvah, let the Torah write that the chiyuv of matan domim and emudim and tzafim by Hashem Mitzvah. And automatically we'll learn all the other Hashamim from Hashem Mitzvah, and we don't have a problem. The only problem is to learn Hashem Mitzvah from the Klal, because it's different. But the Klal can learn out from Hashem Mitzvah. Says this only makes sense according to the Mandama that says you're right, that if the Hashem Mitzvah cannot learn out from and include it in the Klal, but the Klal you can learn out from Hashem Mitzvah, that makes sense. Shop is good. But according to Mandama that says both ways it doesn't work. You cannot learn out the klal from the Hashem Mitzvah or the Hashem Mitzvah from the klal. Both ways it doesn't work. If it's a new din, because it's a whole new gather. And he says you can't split it up and say part of it is like a Hashem and part of it is Hashem Mitzvah. No, we don't. It's a whole new Mitzvah. So since it's a whole new Mitzvah, either way you cannot learn it out. So so you need it according to this Mandama, you need it for the mitzvah. Says the Gemara, and for the Gemara, once the Torah said a pasuk that it goes back to a regular Asham, so he didn't have to talk about, once it's a regular Asham, it's automatically understood that it has to be geshacht and not suffering. Why did you have to specify a second time that it's geshacht in the makim in Sofin Zayt? So that's all it should have said. It should have said that in B'Mekoim, in the same place of the Eilah. So that by saying B'Mekoim is obviously coming to tell you a second time suffering that it's likuva. From where do we know that the the pasuk brought back that Hashem Mitzvah, even in the gate that the shechita has to be b'tzafin? Ema say Kia Hadika when the pasuk said Kachatas Kahasham, the Bayikona, because there you need a kain to do the Aveda. So that's where he brought it back to say that it's just like a regular Hashem, that the Matan Damim and the Imurim have to be on the Mizbeach.
What do you think, Matt?
But shchita, the loy by kahuna. But shchita that doesn't need a coin to do the avodah. Loy, maybe the pasuk did not say
It's only for
that the
blood.
shchita has to be
No,
mitzvah.
loy by itself, because
They
you
can,
got-
only the Kohen-
Yeah, loy by itself.
only
Okay,
the Kohen
if you
is
want to
the
say.
blood. Only the Kohen is the blood. The
Well,
blood
from Kabbalah V'Helech, it was done from receiving the blood and on all the avodah.
everything the Kohen.
That was the kohen. But the shechita alone can be done by Azar. So since the shechita alone can be by Azar, maybe it doesn't have to be mitzvah. Says the Gemara in Cain. If so, name a crowd, then the pasuk should have said ki chachatos hu la kohen. It didn't say. Why does it have to say ha'asham?
Yeah, my kid,
Or my kachatos ha'asham. So from the extra word ha'asham, we learn out kisha hasham is here. It should be like all other hashames, meaning in every aspect, even for shechita, that it has to be mitzvah. So you see the pasuk v'shachas ha'keves memkeim asher yishchat es ha'oila v'sachatos. By Asham Mitzvah, they didn't need it for golf for the year to tell you that by Shechita has to be softened. That by Asham Mitzvah, and so it's extra. Why did you say it? So he said it only liikuva. Okay, in fact, why does the pasuk say both? He says in the pasuk, the Asham you should check in the place where you check the chatas and the oil. Why do you need both? Say one.
It's good enough.
Yeah, and especially oil. That's where it says befeish it was mitzvah. Avina said itzach. I need it. He actually chatas. Well, actually oil. If we would only say the hekesh the chatas and not oil, have amina chatas. Mehichel lemeila. Where do you learn how b'chlal chatas was mitzvah? Meila. You learn out from Meila. Davar alam behekesh, chayzim alam behekesh. We'll have a problem. Chatos, you learn from Meila that it's mitzvah. Asham, you're going to say you learn from Chatos. So because of a Chatos alein is from the hekesh. And Asham, you want to learn out from Chatos with a hekesh. By Kachim, we don't learn a hekesh and another hekesh. So, so just learn Asham. To go to the source, exactly. Go straight to the Eila.
Straight head.
Right. Was darf man gegen Krumm, man kann gehen, wir sagen verkehrt. Was darf man gegen gleich, man kann gegen Krumm. Okay, over here. So let him go directly to the...
Why don't you want to learn from chatas? You can learn from oil.
It's used to say that.
The source that chatas learns from oil.
Right, go straight to Eila. And the Yimana Haba, I mean, I would have thought, Dava halam the hekesh, chayzim halam the hekesh. If I would have learned directly from Eila, I would have thought you're allowed to have two occasions. You're allowed to learn Lamashal Chatas from Oila and then Asham from Chatas.
No, Asham from the oil.
No, if he's asking,
Why can't he go directly to oil?
he says, why can't he? He says, if I would go directly to Oila, I would think, oh, you can make two occasions.
From one source.
From what? From no, from two. You would say,
I would say
yeah, I would say
I'm learning
Asham.
from oil though.
Yeah, so he says, you can have v'chitem nikshay akush lechatas. You said you should have learned directly from Eila. So why would you think?
You have to go to the Chata.
Why would you think? If you're saying the reason why I don't want to learn directly from Eila because I want to teach you, you can have two occasions, right?
What's the two occasions?
Chatas from Eila and then Asham v'chatas. So if I learn Asham directly from Oila, I wouldn't know of the concept of two occasions are forbidden. Okay?
Because I learned everything from oil.
Oila, right.
I wouldn't know.
So he says, I would have thought you
Maybe
could.
also I can go to chatas.
Maybe I could also go to Chatzah. I don't know that you can't unless you say it. So he says,
That's okay.
so he says, okay, so so let us learn out if you're saying, I would have thought you could have two occasions. Why don't we learn it directly from Chatas? What's the big problem?
So you don't need
Let's make a hekesh to Chatas and Chatas to Oila. If you're saying if we're learning from Oila, I would say you're allowed to have two occasions. Lu Yitzu, you're allowed to have two occasions. So why Taka didn't we learn out from Chatas? Is that ayah from this that you went to?
Oh, if I didn't learn out from oil, I would say you could make two vacations.
You're saying because if I would learn it directly from Oila, I would say you're allowed to make.
From chatas, I would say you can make two
No.
vacations.
If I would learn out from
Oila.
Oila, I wouldn't know of the concept. So I would think you're allowed. Says the Yoni, you think you're allowed, so why Taka didn't you learn out from Chatas? So he says,
Back reasoning.
well, okay, so he says like that. So he says, I can answer that. You know why he didn't want to learn out from Chatas with a Hakish? A person would rather go to the source than going through a Tafel. If I can learn directly from Oil, why should I go there? Yeah. So you have no raya that you can learn a double Hakish. That's why we made Dafke that we wrote Chatas also to tell you that Asham is a Hakish to Chatas. But actually, Oila, and it's also a Hakish to Oila. Why? We had to bring an Oila, that you cannot have two occasions. That's why we added Oila to it. The Chatchila, we said Asham, we learn out with a Hakish from Chatas. Right? And Chatas we learn from Oila. But we also added Oila. Not only do we learn out Asham from Chatas, we also learn out from Oila. Because from Chatas alone we cannot. Because it's a double Hakish. That's why we added Oila, and that's how we know you can learn how to Hakish from Hakish. Rava says from here. The Chassidut says in the pasuk, "Let's call Chilul Par Chatas Yom Mevet L'Shtei Aklis V'Esei." He says halakavik. It says by the Par Koyin HaMashiach, you have Par Helam Dava, you have Par Koyin HaMashiach. Par Koyin HaMashiach says openly, you have to be marking the Shtei Kloyes, the two kidneys, and the Yeseres HaKavit, and the diaphragm. By Par Helam Dava, state nicht. Okay? But by Par Helam Dava, it says, Kasha Yudam Mishoy Zevachim Shlamim. It says, Yoman Al-Mai Hilchasa, what is he coming to tell you with these words? Kasha Yudam. Ili Yeseres HaKavit, Ushtei HaKloyes. If he's come to tell us that you have to be makiv the diaphragm and the two kloyes by Par Koyin HaMashiach, says, what are you talking about? Begufiksiv, it says in the pasuk by Par Koyin HaMashiach, beferish, you have to be makriv. You said it's on the Shtei HaKloyes. And the Gemara, Papa Elamishum the Bayil Agmuri, only because the pasuk wants to teach you. You said it's HaKavod the Shtei HaKloyes. Mi Par Helam Dava shel Tzibur LeSeidei Avidz Yecham. He says we learn out Par Helam Dava. You also have to be makriv Shtei Kloyes, and you said it's HaKavod from where? From Par Koyin HaMashiach. Par Koyin HaMashiach is the Kohen or the king made an erroneous psak and everybody followed. The Kohen HaMashiach. I'm not the king, the Kohen HaMashiach. Par Helam Dava means the Sanhedrin made an erroneous psak and everybody followed. By Par Kohen HaMashiach. Okay. Par Kohen HaMashiach state befedish. You said it's Ushtei Kloyes. Par Helam Dava, we learn out from Par Kohen HaMashiach. Then we want to learn out from from Par Helam Davas that the Seidei, the Par Helam Davas shall tzibur l'Sidei Avidus Yecham. We want to learn out that the Sidei Avidus Zara from Par Helam Dava that you also have to be marked the Shtei Kloyes v'Yeseres. L'cheira begufi like siv. You don't have. It doesn't say by the Par Helam Dava shall tzibur that you have to be makiv the Yeseres Ushtei Kloyes. So how could you learn Par Helam Dava alone that you're makiv the Yeseres and the Ushtei Kloyes? You learn out from Par Koyin HaMashiach. So how could you learn out say Izma Avidus Zara from Par Helam Dava, where that itself learns out from a hekesh from Par Koyin HaMashiach? So how could you learn out but Sidei Avidus Zara that you have to be makiv the Yeseres Ushtei Kloyes?
It's the same idea as before.
Yeah, it's the same idea. When Par Koyin HaMashiach with the Gama, he learns it. Par Helam Dava we learn out from Par Koyin HaMashiach, and you want to hachi itzich kasha yuram. That's why we need the actual person. Pasik kasha yuram to teach us the never commanded custom before that it should be as if in Par Helam Dava is befedish geshibim that you have to be makiv Yeseres Ushtei Kloyes.
When it says Shtei Kloyes, it's by Mashiach.
Or Par Koyin HaMashiach. Par Helam Dava we say it's as if it's written from the extra words kasha yuram, and that's why we can learn see Avodah Zarah from it. And now it won't be a hakesh, two hakeshim. Par Helam Dava from Par Mashiach and Sidei Avodah Zarah from Par Helam Dava. Why do you have to write Kasha Yuram to tell you it's as if it's written that you have to be Makal Shtei Kloyes and the Yeseres HaKavod? Leave out Kasha Yuram, let the Torah write the finished by Par Helam Dava that you have to be Makal Shtei Kloyes or the Yeseres HaKavod. If the Torah would have written by Par Helam Dava itself, the loy akish, and we wouldn't compare Par Helam Dava to Par Koyin HaMashiach. Havamina Dava Helam Behekish Chayzim Helam Behekish like before. If the Torah wouldn't write, if the Torah would write befedish by Par Helam Dava, And see, even we learn out from Parhalam Dava, we wouldn't know about the concept of that you can't do a double hekish by clutching. And if you're going to say, okay, let us do the hekish. You're saying, I would have thought you could do the hekish, so let's do the hekish. So he says, no, that's not. We wouldn't do the hekish. Why wouldn't we do the hekish? Because we would rather have by Parhalam Dava, it should be written befedish that you have to be Makav Yosef Hakod B'Shtei Kloyes rather than learning it out from a hekish. That's why the Torah wrote it v'akshay, and that's why the pasuk learned this hekish from Parkoy Mashiach first, and wrote kasher yurim that it should make it as if it's written by Parhalam Dava to tell you Dava Alam v'hekish ein chizim Alam v'hekish. That's something that you learn out from a hekish. That thing that you learn out from a hekish cannot teach another thing from a hekish, only because of kasher yurim. Says the Gemara, we had two. Either we learn out, how do you know you cannot learn a double hakish? Either, like we just said, from the words kasher yuram, or from before that he said that we had by Ashmet Seda, we learn it out from Chatas V'Osham together to teach us that you can't have a double hakish. So, now the Gemara is asking a new concept. You said something that you learn out from a hekish, that cannot teach a third one with a hekish. How about a Gzeda Shabbat? Could a Gzeda Shabbat work after the hekish or not? So after you learn out from the hekish, first, two you learn out from one with a hekish, and three you want to learn out from two with a Gzeda Shabbat. Could it be done? Toshma, come in here and I'll answer you. By Nigay Begadim, Rabbi Nosman after full miss. How do you know if the Tzaras spread all over the beged? She told you that it's going to be tahir. Says the Gemara, we learn it out with a Gzeda Shava. Nema karachas v'gabachas b'gadim. It says karachas and gabachas by begadim. Nema karachas v'gabachas b'gadim. And it says karachas is the front, the gabachas is the back. So it says both karachas v'gabachas by begadim and by nigei adam. Mala holam, just like by nigei adam parli kulei. If it's spread throughout the whole gulf, from the head to the toe, it's good. Avkam parli kulei. So too by a beged, if it's spread throughout the whole beged, it's Gzeda Shava. It says the same word. Hekesh means it's in the same pasuk, bismichos. It's just as strong, if not stronger, than Gzeda Shava. Gzeda Shava is the same words in two different places, but not next to each other.
What is it here? Here it's
Gzeda Shava. Karachas v'gabachas. Says Gemara b'Hasmanola. There by karachas v'gabachas by nigei adam. Where do we know that if it spreads all over, it's going to be tar? Yeah, the chsiv it says by Reish v'Adrago. It says by nigei basa from the head till the toe. The iskish reishei l'regel, meaning the nega reish is there's nesakim also by the hair. And the nigei regel and the rest of the good to teach malahala just like by the nigei basa. If it's spread all over the guf, it's tahir. Avkam by niskei reish. The niskei reish is by the hair, it turns yellow. If it all turned yellow, though it's called a nesakim, so it's tahir. So first of all, by nigei adam we learn out from nesakim, and from nesakim. And we want to learn out nigei begadim from nigei.
That's the same body. It's the same person.
No, it's the same person, but one is going under here. By the here, it says if parachli kulei yotar. It doesn't say by the body. When we learn out from the here. So and then we want to learn out begadim from with Gzeda Shava from nigei guf. Okay, so you see you could.
Nigei guf is the malamed.
Nisakim is the malamed to nigei guf, and nigei guf is the hekesh. The nigei guf. Nigei guf is Gzeda Shava to nigei begadim. So you see, you could. I think I'm going to stop here because we're not going to be able to say it normally now.